Hi, Abraham. I have a question from quite some time ago. When I was about 20, I had an experience that caused me a great deal of concern. Basically, I understand a lot of what you've talked about, and I understand that thought forms are potentially out there and you can attach yourself to them. I had an experience where I felt like a thought form had taken possession of me, has actually started to reside in my body. And
before you go further, and we want to hear you fully, but we just want to put some perspective in this. Our friend was talking about addictions, where it feels like a sort of out of control impulses. Someone said to us one day, Abraham, it feels like my thoughts are thinking me. And we just want to say that every thought that has ever been thought still exists. Nothing goes away. And that whenever you know what you don't want, you know what you do want, and these are the thoughts, all of the improvement thoughts are the thoughts that Source gathers and becomes and holds, and this is so huge and so dominant. But that doesn't mean that the thoughts that you think about unworthiness or about injustice, that those thoughts aren't going out there, and law of attraction is causing a coalescing of those too. So it is possible to get on a wavelength of something so that you tune into that signal, and it's a strong enough signal that it feels like it is thinking you or overpowering you. So before you go further, just to get you to relax just a little bit more, we're going to tell you our favorite story about thought forms. A woman said, I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco. You know the story?
Mm-hmm.
Been driving across these bridges for years. Recently, I am having panic attacks when I go over the bridge. I feel like I have to lay on the floor. What's going on? We said, sounds like you've bumped into some thought forms. Oh, she didn't like the sound of that. Thought forms? And we said, oh, well, there are thought forms everywhere. Things of what you want and things of what you don't want. And law of attraction is causing them to run in rivers and streams. So you can tap into things depending on what you're doing vibrationally. And off you go, sort of on like a movie adventure sometimes, depending on what you've tapped into. We said, but something has changed in your vibrational makeup from the time that going across the bridge didn't bother you to the time that going across the bridge bothered you. What's changed? And she knew right away. My neighbor was burglarized, she said. And I've been going to meetings. We've been trying to decide whether to put bars on the windows or hire a guard. So her neighbor was burglarized, and they talked about it a lot until she activated within herself vulnerability. And then she took her vulnerably vibrating active self across the bridge and rendezvoused with things that matched that she had never rendezvoused with before. That's all. That's all, you see. We promise you, there is not a source of darkness. You don't walk into a room and look for the dark switch, ever. Where's that switch? What switch? The dark switch. What do you mean? You know, you flip it and inky, misty darkness covers up the light. That one. You resist the light, but there is not a projection of darkness, and there is not a projection of evil or a projection of sickness. There's just the pinching off or the disallowing or the tuning into the equal and opposite. And this is the most important thing we want to say to you. Only someone who had lived life and really created a powerful vibrational escrow of enormous goodness and value and worthiness could find the opposite end of it like you did. Because every time you created this, there was something there that caused it. Are you getting the sense of that? So it's possible for something to have been going on in your experience which caused you to activate long enough. You know, you only have to activate a thought for about 17 seconds until another one joins it. And by the time you cross the 68-second mark, you've got a pretty good vibration going on, you see. So Just a basis of understanding. So, can you remember? It's been some time ago, you said, but can you remember what kinds of things were going on in your experience that might have been directing your focus in a negative way?
I was brought up in a family where my father was particularly, loose, a bit of a loose cannon, I would say. He could take himself from being very calm to being very frustrated and angry.
You see, that we want to make this more normal sounding than it sounds, in the sense that when you really, really, really want to be in the vortex and you're not, you're really, really hard to be with. In other words, it's equal and proportionate. And so what you could say in answer to our question that you just said just now is, yeah, I had a dad who, when he was in the vortex, he was just a delight, and when he wasn't, he was a horror to be around. But wouldn't that be true of everybody you know?
Sure.
But something about a parent being like that. In other words, when Esther thinks back on her father, she remembers him jovial and playful, serious, but often trying to be funny, often not funny, but trying to be. But she also remembers her older sister cautioning her, Dad's in one of those moods, watch out. And Esther never seemed to know what that meant. She always just went in like a bull in a china shop and just stirred things up, because she hadn't learned to be sensitive to someone who's out of the vortex. She just thought everybody should always be in the vortex, you see. So we asked you a question and you gave us a perfectly good answer. So what do you think was going on in your experience during the time that this episode happened that might have been inspiring you in a stronger than usual way to be out of the vortex?
I'm not sure, because when the incident happened, and it happened and then continued for 18 months or so, I was actually, I think, in the vortex for the first time in many years. So it was a realization. I remember saying to myself, I was very happy.
All right, so describe to us what happens. What happened?
I had an experience one morning. I was at my girlfriend's house and I was very happy. She went down to make breakfast for her father. And I had an odd experience where I had a booming voice in my head, and I ended up being going out of body. I mean, from what I can understand now. And
what did the voice say?
It was just angry. It was just angry. And when I came out of that, I lost a perspective about things that I should know about. Like, I didn't recognize myself particularly well in the mirror. I didn't recognize.
Well, it's easy to understand that you would have that sort of a jolting experience, because when you were in your girlfriend's house and her father was in the house also. Now, what was going on? Did you spend the night there?
Yes.
And what was your relationship with this girl?
It was a good relationship.
You were lovers?
We were lovers.
And what was your relationship with her father?
We had no real relationship. He was her stepfather. Her parents were particularly relaxed. They were kind of hippie-ish and very easy to be around.
So what were your parents thinking about this?
That they were very free and easy with me as well.
So there was nothing going on as far as you were aware. You were not feeling guilty. You were not feeling that you were doing something that you shouldn't do.
Correct.
You were feeling free and easy?
I was feeling free and easy. I once the experience had passed, it was like I was very, very scared, and I continued to have out-of-body experiences that would actually pull me from my conscious. Like, I would be consciously sitting on my bed, and I would be pulled back, and I would actually go down. I would free fall for minutes, and then I would be in a place that was.
Well, the thing that we most want to project to you now in a way that you can really, really hear it is that when you come into alignment with who you are. It's not uncommon, like our friend earlier wanting to have conversation, it's not uncommon to hear a very confident projection of powerful, pure positive energy. But when you receive something that sounds angry or that feels very angry, you're not tapping into that stream of source energy. So the question is, and the story that we told you earlier about the woman on the bridge applies very perfectly here. You were tapping into a stream of something that was angry. But the thing that we want to say to you, and this is the disconnect that you're having in this, and because it happened so long ago, it might be difficult to unravel it still, so maybe this conversation will be enough for you and maybe it won't. But unless you are vibrationally in the vicinity of something, you don't have access to it in that strong way. It's like the woman who described to us something's wrong with this law of attraction thing, she said, because I was driving down the street listening to music. No, she said, it wasn't just happy music, Abraham. I was listening to you on my stereo as I was driving. Just to shore her point up a little stronger, I was listening to you, and I was pulled over by a policeman and given a very expensive ticket. So how can that happen? How can I be all happy in the moment listening to you, and how can something so unwanted happen? And we said, because you have layers of vibrations going on, and something, in other words, there are many vibrational undertones that with these focus wheels you can work the bugs out of them a little bit here and a little bit there. But what was your ticket for? We said to her, and she said, I was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. And we said, and, well, what do you think about the seatbelt law? And she went on and on about what a ridiculous law it is and how it steps all over her toes of freedom and how nobody has any business telling her what she should or shouldn't do relative to a seatbelt, and how sometimes she pulls it over just to pretend that she's wearing it just so that no one will know. And, in other words, it was very clear with a little bit of conversation that there was a lot more going on in her vibration. So we said to her, so here's the policeman. He's out trolling for revenue. That's what they hired him to do. And this is his area, and these are his clients, and somewhere in there's a certain percentage of people that will do enough wrong that he should be able to produce X amount of dollars of revenue today. And so he's out there. Policemen are very psychically tuned, you see, and not necessarily from inside the vortex. They're tuned to what they're looking for. In other words, they know what it feels like. And it isn't even that they see you, it is that they sense it. So here you are driving down, listening to something that is on the surface making you happy with this underlying vibration going on because you still haven't worked the bugs out of it. And here's this very sensitive policeman driving around, and he sees a car way over there that says, pick me, pick me, pick me. Radiating out of the roof of that car is a vibration. And so what we're wanting to say to you is that these thought forms are sort of trolling around looking for revenue, and we don't want to make them sound real. We don't want to make it be something that you're fearful of, but there is a coalescing of thought that is a vibrational match to some undertones that you have going on. And if those undertones weren't there, you could not rendezvous with them. Now, the good news, we had this conversation earlier. We had a conversation earlier today about if you've got something going on and you don't know about it, don't worry, it will get bigger. In other words, and how, isn't it, we call that post-manifestational awareness. In other words, it has to manifest before you're even aware that it is. But then when it happens, no matter what happened or where you are, now you've got this new vantage point from which to launch your rockets of desire. So you are a powerful creator. You came forth to direct your thought. And that's why you were having all of these multi-dimensional experiences. You've been asking questions about who am I and how do I fit in and where do I come from and how does it all work. And so you experience the full gamut of coming into connection with who you are, to losing your connection and falling from that connection, to tapping into an energy stream that is so far from who you are and feeling your violent repulsion to it. In other words, this is just you getting your feet wet in a powerful powerful way, and rediscovering and remembering what the vortex is, and that that's where you want to be. We don't want to give this to any of you in the sense there is nothing for you to be guarded about. In other words, and those of you who are here, we want to say to you that by the time you've reached the vibrational place that you are called to a gathering such as this, you're close enough to the vortex that things of that nature are so far from your vibration that we don't even have to discuss it again.